Dr. Nguyen, of Vietnamese descent, is an American, lives in Birmingham, Alabama. His wife is a molecular biologist in Birmingham. His daughter is in pharmacology down in Birmingham, and for the last almost 4 years now has lived himself in Seoul, Korea, working for the International Vaccine Institute, working on this particular problem. So again, and that's a little bit unique because it's a vaccine institute, and they've let him delve into the area of antibodies, and which is fantastic. So independent again of what we've done, their work concentrated on mice, taking the IGY, building the antibodies for H5N2, and then infecting the mice with H5N1, and I'm going to let you tell them of your results.
Thank you very much, Terry, and very nice to meet you over here. I'm actually, because of the beautiful weather, fresh air, so I'm after 24-hour trip, so I feel still great over here. Okay, so what I would like to do today is to present you the scientific basis of the new potential use of the IGY for prevention and treatment of influenza. And I call the presentation the older dog, new trick. It means that the avian antibodies or IGY had been used for years, for example, in your facility and in your plant. However, we are the first to provide the proof of concept that this approach can be used for prevention and treatment of influenza. So I put the antibody specific for H5N1 as an example. It's very easy to obtain. And I will tell you the story how I came up with the idea to obtain easily H5N1 antibody or H5N1 specific IGY for prevention and treatment of influenza H5N1. So we use a murine model to prove the concept. Here, the few slides to introduce the problem with the H5N1 pandemic. In the past, the high pathogenic strain of avian influenza H5N1 resulted in more than 430 cases of laboratory confirmed human infection in 15 countries with a death rate more than 50%. The H5N1 influenza remain a global threat because it still continue to transmit among the domestic poultry and wild birds. Last springtime, still few cases happened in Vietnam and Indonesia and Cambodia, human infection with H5N1. So far, up to date, there are several strategies how to control H5N1. The first is classical, is the active immunization. It means that the vaccine development. And H5N1 vaccine is still under development. Even that with a great progress in vaccine development, but no vaccine for human use is still available in the market. I know that so far a few vaccines on the clinical trial, just only phase 1. And phase 2 and phase 3 are still ongoing. So I don't know how long it will take to get the vaccine available for use in humans. And antiviral drugs have been in the market for years, but you know that the problem with the antiviral drug is the cost, with a high cost, and also that I will show you later in a few slides that how effective are antiviral drugs compared with the effect of the IGY. The last one is the passive immunization, including the antibodies specific for the particular virus to shortly prevent the disease and also to treat the disease. And there are several approaches of passive immunization. The recently approach focusing on the human monoclonal antibodies, this is a very, I would say, it's a rather complicated process. We have first to obtain the lymphocyte or blood from the patient infected with the H5N1 virus, and then they survive the infection. And then for a while, we take the blood from this patient and we separate the B cells, only certain white blood cells from this patient. And then you immortalize this lymphocyte by the infection with the Epstein-Barr virus. By the, after infection, some of the cells can survive and can live for a long time. And then they will select what cells clone are specific for H5N1 and what cells clone produce antibodies specific for H1N1 and can cure the disease. So this is a very long process and require a lot of expensive equipment and facilities. And the less expensive is the approach like a phage displays and humanized immuno antibodies, also kind of expensive one, and human recombinant antibodies. So basically all these are still under development. And so far I haven't seen any study that put in the clinical trial with this approach yet. So we have recently come up with the idea, basically with avian antibodies, and this approach fall into the third approach, is the passive immunization, which means that the IGY specific for the virus H5N1 and to use for prevent and treat influenza. However, as you know that the IGY is much less expensive compared with the human monoclonal antibodies. So here's the basics reason why we came up with this idea. So the first thing that the H5N1 epidemic in early 2000, like mostly in 2004 and 2003 and 2004 in Southeast Asia, this epidemic caused a huge problem, economic problem in this area. So many countries in this area implemented the mass vaccination against H5N1. And result, after 1 year, somehow this mass vaccination controlled H5N1 outbreak to some extent. So because of this, we reasoned that the chicken in this country, they have already antibodies. After the vaccination, they make antibodies, so they can control the disease. It means that they have the antibody in the serum, and if they have the antibody in the serum, they should have the antibody also in the egg. So we asked whether if we isolate the IGY from the eggs obtained from this market, if we can use this IGY to treat the influenza. So we isolate the IGY from the egg. Actually, the story is that because of this reason, I came to Vietnam, where I have still friends and relative over there. So I asked my sister to go to different supermarkets over there to buy the eggs from supermarkets. And also I know some guy from the Center for Control of the Disease in poultry. And they know exactly what farm they get the vaccine. So it's 3 batches of the eggs from the 2 different supermarkets and 1 batch from the farm. So we isolate the IGY from there. The control IGY, you know where the IGY come from the egg from Korea, because they don't vaccinate the chicken in Korea. So it is only way that we can get in Asia the egg without IGY specific for H5N1. So when we get the IGY by a very simple method of isolation, classical method, and we treat the mice only once before the infection with the H5N1, highly pathogenic H5N1 strain. And as you see that only 1 treatment before the infection, 6 hours before infection, we get 100% of mice survive. They did not get even sick. Only lightly, they lost lightly weight, but it's not significant. Okay, so they seem that they did not get infected, or they get very minor infection, and then they survive the infection beautifully.